Hello everyone, I'm Alex Dykes, and today we are out here taking a look at the 2016 Lexus RX. This is an all-new model for the 2016 model year, and it has been significantly changed from the 2015 model year. The Lexus RX has long been a little bit different than some of the other luxury crossover vehicles because your average two-row luxury crossover is significantly smaller than this. So something like a Volvo XC60, BMW X3, Audi Q5, or Mercedes-Benz GLK, they're an awful lot smaller than we have here. In fact, for 2016, this is almost as big as a BMW X5. Now, direct competition is a critical thing to say here, because obviously this does compete with the BMW X3 and the Audi Q5, just in a different sort of way. This is all about value, so you get a much larger vehicle for right around the same price. The biggest thing you'll notice about the 2016 RX is this all-new and incredibly large grille. Even our standard RX 350 has this very large spindle grille here. You can see it's much more pinched right here and much larger at the bottom than previous iterations of this grille. There is an F Sport model that uses sort of a squiggly design grille. Again, a lot more bold than the last model. Big changes for 2016 are a full LED headlamp in every model. Now, if you get the base model, we get an LED low beam and an LED high beam in a single projector style unit. The model we're taking a look at here has the optional tri-beam LED lights, which we also see in the Lexus RC. Another change for 2016 is that this Nike Swoosh daytime running lamp strip is now part of the headlamp again. We saw with the Lexus IS, the Lexus RC, and the Lexus NX that it was divorced and it was actually in the body as a separate module, but that's actually changed for 2016. This looks a little bit better integrated. Right down here we have LED fog lamps and LED cornering lamps. That's the small module right here on the inside. Helping further separate the RX from the smaller competition, length has gone up significantly for 2016, nearly 5 full inches. That makes this right about the same length as a BMW X5. It's actually about 1/10 of an inch longer. Even though it is longer, we still don't have a third row in the RX. That means that we still have this very slanting profile at the rear to give a little bit more drama, a little bit more excitement. And we have this design right back here that reminds me a little bit of the Nissan Murano. This dark section right back here is glass, but the only part that's actually see-through is this small section right around here to give you a little bit of added visibility in the back. Also changed for 2016 is the wheelbase. That's the distance between the front wheels and the back wheels. That's up about 2 inches, and most of that goes right to rear seat accommodations. Here's a different rear angle, and you can really see the difference between 2-row crossovers and 3-row crossovers in that we can have a much more sloping rear glass in the back because we don't have to have room for a third row in the vehicle. That's really what separates this from something like an MDX or that X5, because those have to have much more upright rear end profiles. The rear end design is much more expressive than before. We get 2 different rear tail lamp options. They're all LED for the brake lamps and the running lamps. However, the turn signals are standard halogen bulbs. LED is optional. Now, unfortunately, in the United States, we will not get the sequential LEDs that we see in certain other markets. Those LED turn signal lamps are very attractive. The LEDs actually go from the center right here and then finally blink this outside LED turn signal module. It's visually identical in this model, except that it doesn't do that sequential function. Now, the reason the US does not get the sequential LED turn signals isn't because Lexus doesn't love us. It's because the United States has some very antiquated lighting laws. So you should write to your senator, write to your congressperson, tell them to help change NHTSA's laws, and then we can start getting some of those cooler LED headlamps and tail lamps that we see in other world markets. The rear end of the RX is very vertical, so we get this large bumper section right down here, very well integrated parking sensors, and then twin exhaust tips integrated right into the bumper. Now, if you get the hybrid model, we have a slightly different rear end look. A handy feature with this generation of RX is the ability to open the rear end without waving your foot around or without pressing a button on the remote or touching the release right back here. They've inserted a proximity sensor right behind the Lexus logo in some models, and you can just hover a body part over the Lexus logo. You wait till the vehicle beeps the appropriate number of times, you remove that body part, and then the rear end will open. Under the hood, we have an all-new engine for 2016. It's a 3.5-liter V6 engine like before, only now this has direct injection as well as variable valve timing and variable valve duration. That means this engine can switch between auto cycle or Atkinson cycle, depending on what's most efficient. Power goes up to 295 horsepower and 267 pound-feet of torque, which is a decent bump over the last model. In addition, we get an all-new transmission. We actually get the same 8-speed automatic transmission we saw in the RX 350 F Sport last year. This is an Aisin 8-speed automatic transmission, and we also see it in a few other luxury crossovers out there. You should be aware that the fuel economy numbers on the side of your screen are just estimates at this time, and they are subject to change. If you feel like towing with your Lexus crossover, the RX 350 will tow 3,500 pounds, either front or all-wheel drive. The RX 450 Hybrid is not rated to tow anything as a front-wheel drive vehicle, but it will tow 3,500 pounds if you opt for the all-wheel drive package. Front seat comfort ranges from good to excellent depending on the model that you get. Now, new Lux fabric is standard, leather is optional. The four-way adjustable lumbar support and the extending thigh cushion are definitely options that I would get. It really makes the seat an awful lot more adjustable. For me specifically, the extending thigh cushion helps you feel a little bit better supported right here behind the knees. The overall driving position is excellent, and we have a tilt telescopic steering column that is also memory linked. The size of the RX is obvious when you hop into the back seat. This model gives us more legroom than the last generation, and the last generation was already pretty big in the back. We have 82 inches of combined legroom, that's front legroom plus rear legroom, and that's considerably more than you find in the next size category down. That's about 4 inches more than an Audi Q5, 5 inches more than an X3 or a GLK, right about the same as a Lincoln MKX, and that would be the 2016 model. That means that it's quite easy to put a tall person up front and have considerable legroom in the back for tall people as well. The seat bottom cushion is also not as close to the floor as you find in your compact luxury crossovers. This size difference is obvious when you move over to the middle seat, because even though the seat bottom cushion is higher up off of the rear bench, I still have about an inch of headroom left there. And if I move all the way over to the right side of the vehicle, this front seat is all the way back in its tracks, and I still have about 4.5 to 5 inches of legroom left. We also have a decent amount of headroom, more than you'd find again in those compact crossovers. Rear seat passengers do get a fold-down, softly padded center armrest with cup holders that fold out of the front right there, and a small storage cubby behind. This is where you'll find the storage for the remote control for the rear seat entertainment system that our particular model has in it. The seats do fold. Our particular model has the optional electric folding second row seats, and these can be controlled either via a button right here on the seat itself, in the back of the vehicle, or up front by the driver. In addition to the power folding feature, these seats also power recline. This is the most upright position, and this is the most reclined position. Helping improve the cargo area functionality, the rear seats also slide forward and backward to give you a little bit more space in the back. Lexus's rear seat entertainment system has been significantly changed for this model year. It has graphics that are very similar to what we find in the dashboard, and the screen now flips up and down to get a better viewing angle. The system is entirely controlled via this particular remote control, and we now have an HDMI input. You can change sources, you can use this to interact with the system, and of course we have a built-in DVD player. Of course, one of the big reasons to get a crossover this size versus that next size category down is this enormous cargo area. It's about 33% larger than you'll find in an X3 or a GLK. We also have room for a spare tire in the back. Now, in American models, it is a compact spare tire, and we get a small amount of additional storage space right in there. But in Canada, you can get a full-size spare tire. Now, the full-size spare tire unfortunately takes up about 2 inches of cargo room on the floor, so the floor will be a little bit higher than in American models. The subwoofer in this particular model is well integrated into the side of the rear cargo area, and on the other side you can see the controls to fold the rear seats up or down. Let's take a quick spin around the interior. We are in the top-end hybrid model, which means we do have this panoramic roof that extends all the way over the rear seats right there. We also have two-way adjustable headrests and two-way adjustable seat belts for the driver and the front passenger. Our particular model does have these high-end ventilated leather seats, which means they are perforated, and we have all this extra stitching going on. If you opt for the F-Sport package, we get more aggressive bolstering on the seat side and bottom cushion. Over on the front doors, you can see we have some of that additional stitching and this contrasting brown and tan design, which I think is very attractive. You can see that Lexus lowered the dashboard height, making the dashboard look an awful lot less bulky. And part of the way they managed to make that happen was by moving the infotainment screen from a binnacle in the dashboard to this sort of attached tablet-style display like we see in certain BMW models. This is a very, very large LCD, very similar to what we find in the Lexus LS, only again it's in this module sticking up above the dashboard. Moving down from that, we have two large air vents and an analog clock, and we have our Mark Levinson sound system in this upper end model. 2-zone climate control down here, single slot optical display, and direct access buttons to the various media functions. Zooming in really closely to this wood trim, you can see that we have one of the more expensive wood options in our particular model. These are actually aluminum strips that are embedded into the real wood trim that we have here. It is a very attractive look. There's also a bamboo trim available, as well as a traditional walnut trim if you prefer. We have two very large cup holders right over here, and they are height adjustable, so this cup holder right here can be lowered. You can actually push that down. Let me stick something in it so you can see the difference there. And then you can press this button and have that cup holder adjust its height upwards a little bit for slightly shorter drinks. This allows you to put very deep drinks in there without having them spill. This entire area of the dashboard has a slightly different design. We have an optional wireless charger in this area right here, so you can place your smartphone that's wireless charger capable right there like that. This is also where you'll find the seat heating and ventilating buttons, auto brake hold right over here, and the electric parking brake. We have a very traditional gated console shifter here, so we move it over and then down for reverse. There's no button to click. Down for neutral, and then all the way back for drive, over to the left for the manual mode, up for up, and down for down. That's also how we engage sport. So if you don't want to manually shift, but you do want the sport shifting in the transmission, we simply move it over to the left. Behind the shifter, we see a big change for this generation of the RX. Instead of the trackpad that we see in the Lexus NX, which is the smaller crossover vehicle, or the Lexus RC, we actually have gone back to this sort of joystick-like controller that snaps into position on the display. Now we have a map button over here, menu button, back button, up, down, or zoom in out button. That's contextual, depends on what exactly you're doing in the system. And then we have enter buttons on either side to make entry in the system a little bit handier. If you want to know more about this particular system, there is a complete video on that on my channel as well. Be sure and click over there as well. Behind the controller, we have a small storage cubby right under this armrest. It is just about big enough for this iPhone 5C that I happen to have with me, but I was not able to fit my iPhone 6 in there. It's just too small. To the right of that, we have our Lexus Drive Select controller, so we can rotate over to Sport, over to Eco, or press down for the normal mode. Behind that, we have a large and softly padded center armrest. It opens to reveal a fairly large storage compartment. You'll also find a 12-volt power outlet, auxiliary input, and dual USB inputs there. You can see this is fairly deep because of the design of the RX. On the driver's side, we have a very typical 4-dial instrument cluster with a color multifunction display between the tachometer and the speedometer. The multifunction display gives you your very typical trip computer information, as well as certain navigation information, audio information, and information about the safety systems. Our particular vehicle has not only the lane keeping assist, but also the radar dynamic cruise control, so that status is displayed on that screen. Opting for the F-Sport package gets us a partial LCD instrument cluster. The two gauges on the right-hand side here, the engine temperature and fuel gauge, are physical gauges. Everything else is an LCD image. Unlike the Lexus IS, this ring that you see around here does not move, although it is still a physical ring. The center dial does change depending on the mode that we're in, so you can see if we put it in Sport mode, it changes colors right there. Sport Plus is exactly the same. This is adjustable. There's of course a customized mode as well, and the rest of that is all controlled via the buttons on the steering wheel. We have our all-wheel drive display right there to tell you what the all-wheel drive system is doing in addition to your typical trip computer information. We also have a navigation readout, which would show you next turn directions if navigation was active. You could also see audio information right there as well. The 2016 RX gets an all-new steering wheel for Lexus. You'll notice that the cruise control controls are still on a stalk right down here. However, the button for the distance in this radar cruise control system is right here on the right side of the steering wheel. These buttons control that multifunction display right there in the center of the dashboard. This enables and disables the lane keeping assistance system. We have dedicated phone hang-up and pickup buttons on the left-hand side. If you press and hold the hang-up button, that actually activates Siri Eyes Free if you have a paired iPhone. We also have our voice command button, mode button for our infotainment system, track up, down, and volume up down buttons right there. This is a very attractive, very softly padded steering wheel. This is still a relatively hard plastic for the airbag cover, but the grips are very nicely done. We have sport grips right up top, and our particular wheel is also a partial wood model, so we get wood on the bottom and then wood on the top as well. Also new in this generation of the RX is a larger heads-up display. This is about 4 times larger than the outgoing model. It's also a color display with an awful lot more information. We get our speedometer, we get navigation information with lane guidance. We also have either a tachometer or your hybrid gauge that we see down there in the lower right-hand corner, lane information as well as cruise control information, and radar cruise control and lane departure information. There's a lot of information going on there, but it is selectable via the user interface, so you can choose to see some of it, all of it, or none of it. We also get limited media information on this display. As you can see, if we change channels right there, it'll show us our iPod tracks, our FM station, etc. Out on the road, the RX 350 certainly feels different than the last generation RX. Now, some of that is down to the drivetrain changes and the suspension changes, and some of it is actually just down to the seating position. Because we're a little bit lower in the vehicle than we were before, it feels a little bit more car-like, a little bit less truck-like than in the past. Whether that's a good thing or not really depends on your personal preference, but the RX also feels a little bit more sorted than it has in the past out on the road. This 8-speed automatic transmission that Lexus is now using is an absolutely excellent transmission. We see this also in certain vehicles like the brand new BMW X1 for 2016 and certain Volvo models with their brand new Drive E series of engines. The 8-speed automatic transmission is significant because it not only has a taller final gear, but also a much deeper first gear than the outgoing 6-speed automatic transmission. In my very brief acceleration runs in this particular vehicle, I ran from 0 to 60 in 6.5 seconds, which actually is pretty good for this segment. That is about 3/4 of a second faster than the 2015 RX 350 model and right about the same as the last generation RX 350 F Sport. This is a hair heavier than the last generation model according to Lexus's brief preliminary specs. Those are subject to change, of course, but that weight difference likely explains why this is only a hair faster than the 2015 F Sport. Although we definitely get reduced tip and dive in this particular model versus the last generation, braking still scores a little bit lower than some of the competition. That's due to the overall size of this vehicle as well as its weight. Obviously something that's lighter, something like a BMW X3 that's fairly light in this segment, it's going to brake faster from 60 to 0. However, it's also a smaller vehicle and it's lighter. Generation after generation, Lexus has been constantly improving the handling in the RX, which is a good thing because the first generation RX was definitely soft. It was not that much fun out on your favorite winding mountain road. There was a lot of body roll. That's been significantly changed in this generation. The 2015 RX 350 F Sport was a little bit rough around the edges for my tastes. Sometimes the suspension felt just a little bit too stiff for everything else that was going on in the vehicle. In this generation, the average RX 350 has that same sort of solid and connected feel as the RX 350 F Sport did last year, only it's not as harsh, not quite as crashy over broken pavement as the last generation F Sport. The current generation F Sport is just one notch higher than this. Now, in this generation of the RX, the F Sport is really just a looks better package and a little bit of handles better package as well. You don't get any faster acceleration times because the transmission is the same and the engine is the same. Where the RX has long excelled is its excellent highway ride. This is the kind of vehicle you could drive for hours and hours very comfortably. That's made even more comfortable by the optional 4-way adjustable lumbar support and the extending thigh cushion that we have in our particular model. A very quiet cabin has also been something that's typically associated with the RX 350, and again, that's true for this model as well. Now, I haven't been able to test this vehicle on my usual road, obviously, since I'm in Portland, not at home in California, but sound level at 50 miles an hour on roads out here came in at 70 decibels, which definitely makes us one of the quieter entries in the segment. We do still get some engine noise when we floor the vehicle. You can really hear that V6 hanging on under the hood, but I think that's an overall pleasing noise since the vast majority of entries in the smaller segment are now using 4-cylinder turbocharged engines and they don't sound nearly as exciting. Of course, in an interesting twist, certain world markets will be able to get a Lexus RX 200T, which will use a 2-liter turbocharged engine, essentially the same engine we find under the hood of the Lexus NX and the brand new 2016 Lexus IS 200T. Lexus has not released official pricing for the 2016 RX yet. However, based on 2015 prices, we can make a few speculations. The 2015 RX started at $40,970, so you can expect the 2016 model to start between $41,000 and $42,000. The RX 450h Hybrid will likely start around $48,000, and the RX 350 F Sport around $49,000. All new for 2016 is a brand new RX 450 F Sport model, and I expect that to come in right around $52,000. We should know more about official pricing when things get a little bit closer to the on-sale date for the RX. Lexus has been a little bit cagey about the exact on-sale date for the 2016 RX, however, I expect it by November or December of the 2015 calendar year. That means that pricing should be right in line with the Audi Q5, which starts around $41, the X3 that starts around $36, the GLK that starts just about there as well. Cadillac's SRX is a relatively good value, being about this same size, a hair smaller, and starting around $37,000. The most direct competitor to the RX is likely going to be the Lincoln MKX. It starts around $38 and goes up to about $56, so just about the same range as we get here. Now, until Lexus releases complete pricing information and I can get my hands on one for a complete week, it's a little bit difficult to talk about direct comparisons with the competition. More likely than not, however, this will be a hair more expensive than a comparably equipped Lincoln MKX. However, I do expect this to be more reliable and give you better fuel economy. The MKX with the twin-turbo V6 engine is likely going to handle better than the Lexus RX, but the delta has actually shrunk with this generation, because even though this is still relatively softly sprung, the rest of the vehicle is definitely a lot tighter, and a lot more connected to the driver than anything we've seen out of Lexus before in this particular category. Of course, if you're after the most dynamic Lexus crossover, that actually would be the Lexus NX, because Lexus decided to tune that NX to be positioned somewhere between a BMW X3 and perhaps a Volvo XC60. It definitely is a dynamic competitor to the Audi Q5. Now, a lot of people get the Lexus NX confused because the NX is just about exactly the same size as an Audi Q5, so that means this really is not the Q5's direct competitor. This is really the vehicle for you if you're looking at an Acura MDX or a BMW X5 and you want something a little bit softer, perhaps a little bit more reliable, and you don't need that third row seat. The other excellent use case, of course, is if you're looking at a GLK or an X3 and you say, I really want more cargo capacity in the back because we get about 33% more room behind the hatch than we find in that smaller category. Perhaps the thing that's most different between this and the other luxury entries in this segment is that the RX 350 is tuned to run on regular unleaded. So even though we get a little bit less horsepower out of this engine than we get out of the competition, it will definitely cost less to operate. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. Again, I'm Alex Dykes, and this has been the 2016 Lexus RX 350. Be sure and check out my video on the 2016 RX 450 Hybrid. I've tried to make a separate video more specifically on that particular hybrid model as well. Of course, click on those related videos down there at the bottom of your screen, subscribe to this channel, give this video a thumbs up. That does help us get access to cars, and I'll see you next week.